All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome, everybody. Bienvenidos. Buenos días a todos. My name is Vianney, and I am with Community Nature Connection. Welcome to our Black, Indigenous, People of Color, and Environmentalist Career Panel, which is hosted by the Training Institute with Community Nature Connection. A little bit about today's session. We're going to be learning about all of our amazing panelists and how they got to their currently at their career and working environment. A little bit tip for our audience today. You have the option of viewing today's panel by either looking at us through either the gallery session where you can see all of us collectively in like little boxes, or you have the option of looking at us through speaker view and just seeing the main person that's talking. Whatever you prefer as the audience, you're welcome to do it as you please. I know for phones, you might just only get a chance to look at the panel today by speaker view, but I want to be able to give you all that little tip. One more thing, today's session is also being recorded. So as attendees, you will get this recording afterwards, and you can also share with anybody that you feel like will benefit from today's session. And it will also be accessible for anybody that wants to, that couldn't join today because of the capacity of registrations today. Moving along, so attendees on the other side, we can all see your faces and where you all are tuning in from. So feel free to go ahead and write your name, your pronouns, and where you're coming from and what brings you here today on the little chat box. Just keep in mind that the Q&A will be only for questions for the panelists towards the end. But the little chat box is there for us to like chat between the panel. But Q&A will be towards the end. And so yeah, everybody feel free to go in and write where you're coming from, your name, and what brings you here today on the little chat. And we'll start looking at that as we continue with today's introduction. Let's see. So as we continue, I want to go ahead and give a land acknowledgement. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land that we are standing on is ancestral land of the Tongva, the Chumash, and the Tatavian people. By honoring this truth, we pay our respects to their elders, past and present, who have nurtured this land for generations and continue to do so. We invite you to please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that brings us here today. And moving along, the Training Institute is relatively new to CNC, but it's also part of where maybe some of you have had a chance, and we provide trainings for those that wanna enhance their professional or naturalist outdoor skills. Today's more like of an educational training because you all get to hear about our stories. And CNC, for those that are not aware, CNC is a nonprofit, and we are driven towards our mission to increase access for diverse communities with innovative programming and partnership with the communities that we serve. And today's panel is put together also because it was inspired by our alumni who are also interested in learning more about environmental careers. So they're out there in our audience, so hello to our alumni on the other side. And a little bit about myself. My name is Vianney. I started off with CNC as a youth. I was introduced to the outdoors when I was 16. No, when I was 18, I'm sorry. I was a freshman in college, and through that program, I learned how to camp. I set up my first tent. I roasted a s'more for the first time in my life during that program, visited my first national park. A lot of it was like first time moments, learned about the difference between the San Monica Mountains and the San Gabriels. I didn't even know there was a difference between that, and like the San Gabriel was right behind my backyard. So I give a lot of thanks to that program, and really honored to be able to do this with CNC and hold the space that I do with all the panelists today. And that's a little bit about myself. And just to reintroduce, the whole goal of the purpose for this panel today is for everybody to learn about how is it that the unique experiences of our panelists, you know, what do they went through, what are some things they got involved in that brings them to their environmental career today, along with also the barriers that they've had to overcome to be in their position today. And yeah, that's the introduction for today. Like I said, welcome everybody. And we'll go ahead and get started by introducing our amazing panelists that are here today this morning. And we'll go ahead and get started with Mithra.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mithra Akshan. So happy to be here talking with all of you today. My pronouns are she and her, and I am calling in from Los Angeles, but I work at Channel Islands National Park over in Santa Barbara County. And so happy to have you here. Oh, and I work there as a park guide. And so I do orientations and visitor services and just inviting people to the park. And I'll get into more detail about that in a bit.
Thank you, Mithra, for your introduction. We'll go ahead and move it on to Sally.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sally Garcia, and my pronouns are she, her, ella, and I am from Los Angeles, and I work as a project assistant / project manager for the Mountains Recreation Conservation Authority, as well as a lead naturalist for Community Nature Connection, and I am on the Next Generation Advisory Council for the National Parks Conservation Association, also known as NPCA.
Sally, do you want to talk a little bit about what your work consists of?
Oh, for MRCA, so I'm in the park planning division. So think about like everything that goes behind the scenes of making an actual park, which is kind of fun to be behind the scenes, and you don't realize how much work goes into it, into creating the space for everyone. You just kind of see it happen, but there's a lot of different little moving parts, and I can get into it a little bit more later.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sally. And I'll go ahead and move it on to Bryan.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Bryan Matsumoto, and I'm a program organizer at Nature for All here in Los Angeles County, along with my coworker, Araceli Hernandez. I work mainly on transit to trails planning. We have some ambitious initiatives to try to connect our Metro Gold Line up to the mountains because there's no way to get up there without a car, right? And so we're trying to remove those barriers to access by planning some shuttle systems. Previously, I worked for about 10 years in landscape architecture, mostly park design through small landscape architecture companies, which was really rewarding. But I joined the Nature for All Leadership Academy a few years ago, and it really brought me into this outdoor equity space and kind of empowerment and advocacy for our underrepresented communities. And so I really feel like I've hit my stride here, getting to work with community in that way. So I look forward to connecting with you all. And I also work with Great Outdoors Los Angeles, which is a mostly gay LGBTQ camping and hiking organization as well. So thanks.
Thank you, Bryan, for that beautiful story and your connection and your journey in the outdoors. We'll go ahead and move it on to Ramsey now.
Right. I was going to say good afternoon. Have to remember where I am. My name is Ramsey Harris, she, her. I'm coming from Denver, Colorado, so we are an hour ahead. And I am a community programs director for a nonprofit called GRASP, Gang Rescue and Support Project. I lead and develop interpretation for a year-round program, mainly in the summer, for 15 youth called GRASP Youth Park Guides. My goal is to, and actually also our goal at GRASP is to counteract gentrification, over-policing in parks, gang activity, and intergenerational trauma. So we're always trying to work with our youth to get them job skills, but also help them to build their self-esteem and show them that they belong in the outdoors. I worked for California State Parks for several years down in Sacramento as an interpretive guide. So very homesick right now seeing everyone from California, but I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ramsey. I think your work really highlights a whole other aspect of the outdoors and how that serves our communities. Thank you. We'll go ahead and move it towards Brenda.
Hi everyone, my name is Brenda Kyle, pronouns she, her, ella, chingona, and I'm glad that you let me put that on the profile. Thank you very much. I currently work for the Theodore Payne Foundation for California Native Plants and Wildflowers. I started out as the volunteer coordinator, and over the course of the few years that I've been here, there was a lot of conversation had about what what role the Theodore Payne Foundation is playing in the outdoors, specifically in environmental justice. So now I'm the community engagement coordinator. I still handle volunteers, but now the scope is a little bit different. When I'm not here wrangling rattlesnakes, I volunteer for Eaton Canyon, I volunteer for the Sheriff's Department, and I respond to fires and containments and all that fun stuff. And I also run, with the help of Bryan and Araceli, a program in Spanish to get people into the outdoors.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, Brenda. Definitely feel like I can already see you out in the field with the snakes, picking them up.
That was this morning. I wrangled a snake. Just so you know, I'm wearing gold glittery shoes and a dress. And I was out there handling that snake.
You're like, the snake doesn't know that I'm going to be looking all nice and flawless a bit on this panel. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you so much for that introduction. We're going to go ahead and move it on towards Araceli now.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Araceli. I'm a program organizer also with Nature for All. I actually was in a whole different field prior to this, and Nature for All kind of helped open that door for me. Now I work as the Leadership Academy coordinator. So I know Bryan shared a little bit about the Leadership Academy. I'm also a graduate of the Leadership Academy as well as Brenda. So I'm pretty proud that it's gone full circle, and now I'm able to kind of help lead those efforts in creating our next generation of stewards. I also work a little bit on our transit program, mostly on our pilot program, which is connecting people to our Angeles National Forest. So a really good example of that is actually Bryan's background. That was one of our trips that we were able to take over by Redbox. So a little bit about me.
Thank you, Araceli, doing the work, bringing on the next generation of environmental stewards. Awesome. Thank you, Araceli, for that introduction. We'll go ahead and move it on to Jules now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ranger Jewel Johnson. I'm a supervising ranger with the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority. I also call myself the accidental ranger because my journey started as a 2-week assignment at the MRCA in accounting, and 24 years later, here I am. I'm also what they call a generalist ranger, which we're police officers, we're firefighters, we lead hikes, maintenance, which is the glamour part of our job. We do it all, which makes your job much more interesting, and your day go by much faster when you can do wear different hats. I also have worked with the International Ranger Federation. I was a former secretary of that. We held our last Congress in Nepal, where it was the first time in Asia, and we had close to 600 rangers from every part of the world. It was very successful. Wait for our next one. And I also work with the Green Line Foundation in Australia, which is the charity arm of the International Ranger Federation.
Thank you, Jules, so much for that introduction. I think your accidental ranger moment, I feel like highlights how a lot of us don't really know sometimes where we're going to end up, and then it kind of just leads to this, path of discovery. And sometimes, at least for all of us here, our paths have made it so we are here working in the environment. So thank you, everybody, for those introductions. I can already see how all of us bring a little bit of different parts of the environment, whether that's working with youth, like directly connecting them with the outdoors for a better connection. Ramsey, I know you bring that. And so everybody here, I just want to say thank you. We will now go ahead and get started with the questions of the panelists today. And so for our attendees and our audience, just keep in mind that any questions you have directly for the panelists throughout the session, feel free to go ahead and use the Q&A box, which is going to be, it just says Q&A, and that's where you can ask all the questions. And I'll be looking at those kind of once we get closer to wrapping up the session. So just to get started for today, I want to go ahead and ask everybody the first question, which really I feel like is going to highlight how your careers really connect to the environment. So the first question that I'll go ahead and start with is going to be, describe that organization you work for, and what is your role there, and how does it tie back to the environment? And I'll go ahead and pass that over, and I'll probably have the same pattern that we had going. So I'll start with Mithra.
All right. Hey, everyone. So I work for the National Park Service. Right now, as I said, I'm working for Channel Islands National Park as a park guide. But I've been working with the National Park Service for almost 3 years now as a uniformed ranger. And I did multiple internships for about 4 years before that. And so the National Park Service is a national government organization, and their mission is to protect and preserve the natural and cultural resources for current and future generations. And also in their mission, they have the word enjoyment for the enjoyment of current and future generations. So I think that's probably the only government organization that has the word enjoy in their mission statement. And so I always try to remember that when I'm at work. And so, yeah, the organization protects some of the country's most pristine wildernesses and wild places, so that hopefully we can everyone can go and enjoy those public spaces that are meant for everyone. And so my role there is, at the moment, I am a park guide. I just got hired permanently for Channel Islands. I work on Santa Cruz Island. And so I do orientations for visitors. The visitors have to take a ferry to get onto the island. We are the least visited park in California, but that's because it can be a little bit challenging to get to. But when the visitors get there, I'm the first person they see on the pier, welcoming them to the island. I do a bit of orientation, letting them know how they can stay safe, and what their options are. We do guided hikes and tours. We talk about the natural history, of course, the cultural history, because we are on ancestral Chumash land there. On the Channel Islands. I'm also part of the social media team, so I think it's really fun. I get to share with the world things that I think are interesting about the park and things that people might want to learn. I get to work with junior rangers and teach them about how they can protect the park and swear them in and get them junior ranger badges. I am a little bit of a generalist as well. I don't do any of the firefighting, but because I'm the only ranger in that area, if anything happens, I'm the person that they call to come assist. Yeah, and the way that it ties back to the environment is my job there is to protect that specific park and teach other visitors how they can protect the park and teach them to care about the park, so that hopefully when they go home, they can care for it and continue to keep the places protected.
Awesome, Mithra. I feel like you definitely hold quite a few roles being a ranger out there.
Yes.
A little bit of everything, which is what makes being a park ranger there feel like exciting, because you have different roles. It's like the education part, making sure that everything is like going right, but then those like heavy emergencies that can potentially occur, right? That's the environment. Like the environment is so unpredictable sometimes, especially now with like the fires and what's occurring. So I feel like your job definitely has like a balance of like the fun and like kind of, you know, overseeing a little bit of everything there.
Yeah, and we're 2 hours away from any emergency services. So that's always something I try to let visitors know while they're having fun, is just please keep in mind to keep yourself as safe as you can while you're coming out to enjoy the park, because help is a little far away.
That's very important. Thank you, Mithra, so much for that first question down. I'll go ahead and now pass it over to Sally Garcia.
Hi, everyone. So I work for the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority, which is a local public agency here in Los Angeles that focuses on acquisition, land preservation, protection of wildlife, open space, urban and river parklands. And my role there is as a project assistant / project manager. Just like Jewel, a lot of us within the agency do a lot of different roles, which make your job kind of very different every day and not boring. And my job there as a project assistant / project manager ties to the environment, because I'm able to work on projects that create more open space and parkland for not just for like mountain communities or the Santa Monica Mountains, but also urban areas. near the river or certain urban areas in Los Angeles as well. And I'm a firm believer that we can create all these open spaces and parklands, but a park isn't a park unless you have community around it. And that's kind of something I like to focus when it comes to the community aspect of any of the projects that I'm able to work on. Community is a big part of it, and I want to get them involved as much as I can. And I've been lucky to be able to work to see some parks come into fruition. Some are slow going, but being able to work behind scenes and see all the work that goes into creating a park for everyone to enjoy is something I never expected to work in, but it's been fun. It's challenging, obviously, as with all of our jobs, we find there's little things that are challenging, but it's certainly very rewarding as well. I don't know if I missed anything.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. You're great, Sally. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a whole other aspect of, I think, working in environment is like the organizing, the development of it, the teamwork amongst like the agency, right? And I think working as an agency, it's like there's things that you have to respect versus things that are like you want to take into consideration. And yeah, the people of a community is really what I feel like gives life to a park, right? Like we can't just come in and create this green space without knowing exactly it is what a green space is like in need of, right? So I think you hold a really critical point of that, Sally. So thank you so much for that.
No problem.
We'll go ahead and move on now to Bryan.
Cool. It's perfect going after Sally because Sally works in kind of that similar space that I was in before in park planning. So before, when I was working in landscape architecture, it was around, you know, planning parks and design. But what kind of helped me make a little bit of the transition more to this advocacy side was that really seeing nature deficit disorder like before my eyes. Like I distinctly remember one time we had a grand opening of this native plant park in Duarte, and they bust in these kids and it was supposed to be all exciting, and my boss is like, oh, they're gonna run through all the bioswales and touch all the plants, and instead teachers were literally telling children like, hey, stay on the path, like don't touch that plant, watch out for bugs, like don't go down there in the rocks. And we're like, we waited for years for this thing to be built, and like if the adult generation is already afraid of nature, like what's gonna, you know, obviously they're not gonna pass on that love to kids. So that kind of like motivation about really connecting folks outdoors combined with kind of the advocacy and empowerment stuff that we do at Nature for All, I felt that really connected with me. And so now I'm a program organizer at Nature for All, working on transit to trails planning, but also previously in our leadership development program. And so developing local leaders in the community to have these skills of advocacy and park advocacy skills, I guess, to make sure resources come to their own community is a big strategy that we have to grow leaders in the community.
Thank you, Bryan. I think you really bring in a lot of how you were on the other side of it, right? And you really had to like twist it around and be like, I want to be part of this other side. I think you were so greatly contributing on the other side of the design of parks, but now it's like you're hands-on and building those like intimate connections with the community and them getting to know you and building that trust that like you're that person that can, you know, for them to be connected to the outdoors and building that relationship even more. I think that transition to the other side is always can like, you know, like you let go of something, but you're building on something again, which is like that deeper connection with nature that you get to build with the people in your community. Thank you, Bryan. We're gonna go ahead and pass it over to Ramsey now.
Right. So yeah, so I want to give you just a little bit of context of my organization, GRASS, Gang Rescue and Support Project. We are an intervention program for underserved and underrepresented youth here in Denver. We serve mainly the metro area. And I always tell people that our mission, within our mission, is heal people, heal people. So that is the first thing that we focus on in all of our programs, is trying to build a bridge to that healing process. All of my youth come from some form of trauma. Even though we are a gang intervention program, you don't have to be in a gang to be helped through us. We realize that trauma runs deep, especially intergenerational, and we are here to support any youth who needs supporting in any way we possibly can. When it comes to my program, what happened a couple of years ago, for the last, I would say 5 to 7, maybe even 10 years here in Denver proper, is the gentrification coming through and pushing all the youth out to outlying areas. And the youth here that have grown up, their parents are from here, so they didn't just get here, right? This is their land. This is where they belong. And then all of a sudden, all these people, and I would say, including myself, right? I'm from California. I come here and move in, rent, own, whatever is decided, and they don't understand how their family is going to support them. They can't pay for the rising housing costs. They can't understand why all the different buildings that used to be there, they're no longer there. Denver public schools falling apart. So they're looking for, what we all look for is some kind of understanding and some place to go for support. So what GRASP decided to do last year under Greater Outdoor Colorado is to build an urban park program specifically for the east side of Denver, and to occupy that park with youth using interpretation, outdoor education, environmental education, or anything that really got the youth engaged in the park. My biggest bridge, what I use, I'm an interpreter, I'm a heritage interpreter, so I use that a lot to give them job readiness skills. We also have to focus on, with our youth, relevance. We use it a lot, right? Interpretation, that word relevant. And it's very important to our youth because we have to give them the why. Why are they here? They ask that a lot, and it's a great question, because they're not just gonna go into the park because it's there. They want to do something while they are there. So we give our youth stipends. They get hourly pay, 20 hours a week, $12 an hour, to come and engage with the community through interpretation or safe play. If you don't want to come to the table and touch, a fox pelt, it's okay. You can pick up a ball and interact with the community that way. So we're trying to always be broad in our connection to the community, but the underlying goal is to give those youth empowerment and skills that they can use after the program is over. We want to transition them either into an internship within the community or move them into some kind of job readiness program that we run as well. It's not interpretation based, it's run through our enterprises program, which is a print shop. So if they would like to continue to work with GRASP, they can go into that as well. So we're always trying to think ahead with our youth, because we realize that healing is a process, and we give them these skills, but we know we have to constantly follow through with these skills. We can't just send them out like, thanks for coming to the program, and say, hopefully you'll come back next year. We try to build relationships with them through myself or our case managers who support them with their schoolwork. Some of them have really high-end cases if they need help through the juvenile detention center support. So we're always trying to help out on multiple levels. The outdoors is the vein that my program runs through, but we do realize that this is just one part of many prongs that we have to support with our youth here with our programs.
Thank you, Ramsey. I think you play such a critical role, and I feel like an audience in our society that thinks that just because a youth has fallen through the cracks, like they're not deserving of experiencing, nonetheless, the outdoors, right? That's like the last place that you consider bringing youth that are going through a lot, internally healing. Healing is such a powerful word. It's such I think it captures a lot, even as people of color that have already endeavored so much through generations, right? Through migration, through what it is that we got to face like day to day. And then our communities to be introduced to that is like what is this place? What are you gonna, when we grow up and like watching the stuff that we do on TV that has to do anything with the outdoors, it's like we're not being seen through there. And growing up myself, like I didn't have the best positive influences around me. It wasn't until I found like a youth program that really transformed my whole life and the way that I saw everything beyond me. But it was really like, and then also a little background context of like myself, it's like I'm undocumented. So like the outdoors is a place where I have found a lot of healing for my like own generational like trauma that comes with it. It's like, I'm not from here, I'm not from there. And the outdoors is like, it's not judging you, you know, nature just asks that we all take care of it. And a lot of those like professional skills that like you gain with it is like so helpful when you can do that in that org. Like we're not just providing you this like service, but we're gonna give it to you like in other like skills of like a pipeline that can get you out to like, you know, more careers, you know, get more involved in what you think you know of like your life based on the communities that we come from. So thank you so much, Ramsey, for that work that you're doing. I'll go ahead and pass it over now to Brenda.
I already forgot the question.
It's okay. It's a lot of dialogue.
So where do I work? That's the first part, right? So yeah. I work for the Theodore Payne Foundation. We are a nonprofit. The focus is education, and we support ourselves by also running a nursery. So anyone in Los Angeles, Southern California, sometimes even Central and Northern California, if you've ever had a need for a native plant, native seed, native tree, you probably went through us. Decolonization isn't a word that has historically been in our literature, but restoring the California landscape is what we're about. So if we have to say decolonize, then we have to say decolonize, but it's restore and get it back to its original state. What was the second part of the question?
No, you're doing wonderful, Brenda.
Okay, so that's what we do. We have educational programs. We go to schools and have gardens. We have a lot of classes about the traditional uses of the plants, and all of those classes have always been taught by Indigenous people. No one on staff will do anything ethnobotanical. I want to make that clear. Because recently someone asked us why, you know, everyone on staff is white. Okay. Hello, do you see me? Do I look white to you? Okay, whatever, stop generalizing. But anyway, so I want to specify that the gardening community has always been seen as kind of for old white people that have money. And in a sense that's true, because time and money are resources. But we are here to educate everyone, not just on California native plants, but why they're important to our ecosystem, why we need to revert to, I shouldn't say revert, why we need to go back to our roots and move away from that European ideal of what gardens should look like, because it's not sustainable. That's not, and you know, and in the big picture, really move away from that European ideal of what beauty is, and move away from ideas that, you know, the landscape has to look like this because this is what's normal. No, just look outside your window, look up to the mountains. That's what's normal, and it's beautiful. In the work that we do here, we do have field trips, but not now because there's a cootie outbreak. But when we do, we talk about displacement of people, because the plants were displaced, so were the people. We talk about how everything is intertwined. The culture, the place, the plants, the people, just everything in general.
Thank you, Brenda. I think that really highlights how, you know, taking space in an environmental career today means that as a person of color, you also get to also have an input in how we start thinking of careers in the environment today, right? How everything is interconnected with like that ancestral knowledge that has always been existing here has always been here, right? But it's like we gotta say it from the perspective of knowing that we are very familiar with this knowledge, and we're gonna uplift those stories that aren't being heard, right? Especially, I really love what you said about how the plants were also just, displays. Being all these fires that occur, I mean, here in Southern California, a lot of it has to do with like invasive plants, plants that are non-native. And that's a whole history content. We can have a whole panel about just like the content of fire and plants, and like how that whole like ties back to like what we currently are facing at stake with like displacement. So I think your career, or being like where you're at, Brenda, I feel like it really holds a really strong place in your voice and how to shape that conversation.
Yeah, I just want to say too that everyone on the panel, and to everyone that's tuning in, existing is advocacy. Taking up space in a place where we're not expected is advocacy. Saying what you think and questioning the status quo is resistance and advocacy. So keep on just existing.
I love that, Brenda. I love that with your heels out there and everything. I can really see you picturing like you saying that statement and walking with it. We're gonna go ahead. Thank you, Brenda. We're gonna go ahead and pass it over to Jules now.
Yeah, so again, I work with the MRCA, or the long version, the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority. Like I said, I've been a ranger for 24 years. I started off, again, like a 2-week assignment, a temporary assignment, just to get away from the textile industry for a while. And when I got a knock on my office door from Joe Edmonston, so I'm looking at your resume and I'm like thinking, what do you think about, being a ranger? Because when I went to college, my whole thing, I was going to be a police officer. It was all about LAPD, going to go. Then I decided, no, I don't want to do that. Did a lot of different jobs, banking, again, back to textiles. So I started my career very late. I was 32 when I started my career as a ranger. And again, I go back to the accidental ranger because my last experience with nature really was when I was 12, when we were hiking with our church group called the Pathfinders, and we got lost in the woods. And so it's like, that was my experience from 12 to 32. And actually, I thank myself thank Joe every day for giving me this career, because it exposed me to so much. I remember when I was doing my training and we're up in the Santa Monica Mountains at Temescal, and I'm like, who's throwing shells up here on the trail? Who does that? Because I had no idea. It was like, so they were telling me how that came about. But our agency is really about opening up nature to everybody, exposing people to nature, making that part of their life. I hope that one day again, the school system will get back to incorporating that into their curriculum. Because when I started, I was working and living at Temescal Gateway Park, and we had Earth Adventure Camp. We had 2 camps come in every week. One camp came Monday, left on Wednesday. The next camp came Wednesday afternoon, left on Friday. And these kids, again, their first time in the mountains, had no idea they were there. I also found out that most people in Los Angeles didn't know the mountains were here either. I was just like, yeah, that mountain you go over every day in the 405, yeah, big mountain range. So being a part of kids' first experience with, the outdoors, I mean, I've done several things. Like I said, I'm a supervisory ranger. I supervise our coastal parks. I'm now doing the filming for the agency. But again, my main job as a ranger is always about my job. I protect people from people, people from the animals, animals from the people, and the people from the resources. I want people to come to the park so that they will have an enjoyable time. And it's like, we had a park we built actually in Compton, on the corner of Compton and Slauson. It was an 8-acre ODWP pipe yard. Not only did we build a park there, we hired from within the community to build that park. So that community had an emotional tie to that park. And even though there was literally a war zone, a gang war going around all over that park, they protected that park. That was a safe haven. Even the gang members that would come to the park, even though I think I kind of creeped them out because I was so nice to them, because I figured, hey, even gang members want to have relaxing time with their families. And so when they left, I would say, hey, come back at 9 o'clock. We have a bus taking you to Santa Monica Mountains. Bring your kids. They would bring their kids. And it's just like, again, that's how I approach everybody in the park. You know, there's not, maybe that people of color, you think they're not in the park. We are in the parks. We're in the city parks. We're in the county parks. Maybe not so much in the national parks, because national parks, if you think about it, that's a road trip type thing, experience. If you're road tripping, you're going to the national parks. And then taking it back to, there was a program with the bus systems where they were providing buses to underserved communities, which will allow them the access to the parks. I never understood why that program went away, and I hope that they can somehow get that program up and running again. But what Bryan says, we have to have that emotional connection the kids do with the parks. You have to get them at a young age. I don't understand why the powers that be are not taking advantage. The most captive audience we have of young people and kids of color is the public school system. Why aren't we partnering up with the public school system? It's already there. Why can't that be a part of the curriculum? And I would think that, especially we're going through, as Brenda says, the cootie outbreak, it's like, get outdoors. Start having outdoor classrooms. Start thinking outside the box. Stop thinking outside the classroom. Start having these nature, I mean, it's just, if you're not gonna let them have recess, have them come to the park. Again, it's their first experience. And we all know in this town how relaxing nature can be. I'm sure you have your favorite hike, a place in the mountains that you can go to that you know that no one's going to bother you. You know, that will be for kids too that could be going through trauma. They come to a park where it's peaceful. It's away from the noise that they have to face every day. But I would hope that that conversation of partnering up with the school districts, and I don't see why that would be such a hard thing to do. You got two separate governmental entities. You're trying to help the kids. Why aren't you partnering up? Why aren't you talking? Why isn't that a priority in your curriculum? You know, it's just like, that helps my job as a ranger on the law enforcement side, because that's how we do enforce. We educate. It's not about giving that ticket. It's like, okay, this is why we have these rules and regulations. We want you to enjoy this in the future. You know, if you pick that flower, who's going? Then that take that out of the ecosystem. Then you have bald spots all over the place, and the next generation, the next people, the next day can't enjoy it. So, again, it's like, that's been the best part of this job for me. And then, of course, working with the International Ranger Federation. I mean, I have friends literally from every part of this world, and they're lifelong friends. And but it also puts perspective of what we deal with in this country and then what they deal with in other countries. It's like, you know what? I don't have that much to complain about. You know, we're at the International Ranger Federation. They're trying to get training, just basic training for their rangers. We lost over 100 rangers last year. No, this year so far. You know, so it's just like, but they need training. They need support. You know, I always think, if you want to be for the environment, why aren't you for the rangers? We want to save the animals, but who do you think is saving the animals? Who's saving the habitat? The rangers, the wardens, the conservation officers. But around the world, they lack training, they lack recognition. Why is that? Is that then, is that last line of defense for our wildlife, for our habitat, but they're not being protected. So it's just like, that's why I enjoy being a part of the Ranger family, and being introduced from 20 odd years ago to the environment and connecting back to nature.
Thank you, Jules, so much for all of that. I think you touched a lot about really what the questions are going to come afterwards. You know, I think you really touched on like the development of what you get to do like with your job, like literally creating a physical space of a park. You also touched upon like the challenges, right, of like your job versus like having a go out there and advocate for why is it that you want to continue to like not only have these green spaces, but also bring other kinds of communities to the service. I think that's a part of like working in the environment as people of color is like, I find myself a lot like, yes, we can have a program, but it's like we're thinking of like everybody back at home that we want to bring with us, everybody that we also want to think that are going to benefit from these services. You know, being a ranger, you know, it's definitely, I feel like a dream of mine one day to be. And I think you and Mithra have a lot of that correlation of like the importance of what you educate people when we're on these lands and how it's like, you know, we think of them, we think of parks and we think of spaces, but there's so much more that goes into it. And I think as us taking space in these roles, we tend to really not only do our jobs, but we tend to also bring so much like creativity and need to like how we want to see these spaces in the future. Thank you, Jules. We're gonna go ahead and pass it over now to Araceli.
Yeah, so I'll keep it a little shorter because I know Bryan went over a little bit about what we do at Nature for All. I just want to highlight our tagline: protect, create, and connect. So that's kind of what we're really focused on, protecting what we already have. And I think Jill spoke really well to this just now as far as for us Angelinos, many Angelinos don't know like our local national forest or our Santa Monica range, and that's for them, like accessible and open for them. I didn't share this, but I did work previously for a short while as a ranger. And I remember that was like the most common question. It's like, well, how much do you have to pay to get in? How much is it? How, like specifically for the forest that like around just, it's free and it's for you and you can come whenever you know, when you want. So there's protecting, but also connecting people, right? That's the end of our create, connect, connecting people and recognizing that there's barriers, not just physical barriers, like getting people there through transportation, but maybe not having people that look like you. So how do you relate? How can you ask people questions? If people don't speak the language that you do, if there's not signage in your language. And so realizing that these are all barriers as well. And so creating opportunities for our community members through advocacy. We work a lot on policies. I think being as we're a nonprofit, Nature for All, we see these gaps that our rangers and our forests and our park spaces are needing support with, and that's kind of where we fill in. We try to fill in the gaps. So thankfully, we were like, for the Angeles National Forest, our biggest win has been getting about half of it designated as a national monument. So that means hopefully more forest rangers that actually look like the diverseness that Los Angeles is and serves like the people that it's, you know, people coming from the community that are gonna come and help our community members. So we work a lot on advocacy and policy, and then the tie-in is always when it comes to community and connecting them and having them realize like the wonders and the jewel that it is to have these natural spaces, the treasure that they are, and then empowering them to be advocates for their community member, to protect these spaces, connect their community members, and so on.
Thank you, Araceli. Yeah, I think when we occupy these roles in the environment, we start seeing like the little things I feel like we didn't acknowledge before, like the signage, how that's so important, right? As like, and that's a whole other like sector of like, I think working in signaging, or like what that role is. Like, I feel like when you take a design of something, you start wearing like multiple hats sometimes, you know, like you start thinking of other little things you want to contribute. And I really like how you highlight policy. Araceli, I think that is like a really big part of like working in the environment is like policy, making sure that there's funds coming in, making sure that our reps back in the Capitol are also being, you know where these funds are important for us, especially for folks that are working in the environment, and all the programming that we're like putting out there for our community. Thank you, Araceli. So now we're gonna go ahead and move on towards our second question of the panel for today, which is gonna be, I think all you gotta like touch on it, but now you can go ahead and like elaborate more on this for our audience that really wants to know like, what is the most like, what are your favorite things like in your job? What is your favorite thing? What is the most rewarding? But as it's already been talked about, like challenges. I think Jules, you gotta touch on some challenges of like, you know, like what are those things that you face day to day that are your favorite, rewarding, and challenging about your position and where you're at today. And we can start with Mithra.
Hey, so some of my favorite things working specifically with this park, of course, the wildlife. I mean, I have a commute across the Santa Barbara Channel, and we might see humpback whales or fin whales, and so getting to see those while I'm working is pretty amazing. And then when I get to the park, you know, we have the island foxes there, and we have leopard sharks, and so it's really meaningful for me to get to see, you know, maybe someone who had this deep fear of sharks, and then they can view one from the pier safely and just have a whole different connection with this animal that maybe has a bad rap. And especially with the island foxes, you know, these are animals that were on the endangered species list up until 2016, and I get to see children and all sorts of visitors from different ages and different backgrounds get to see this animal that wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the hard work of different nonprofits and the National Park Service and researchers and of course members of the community. So this animal, you know, is an example of people working together to keep wildlife wild and alive. And so to me, that's really rewarding to get to be a part now. You know, of course, I wasn't at this park when they were working on protecting this animal, but now I can help continue to show people how important it is to work together to protect the environment, protect these open spaces for future generations. So that's one of the things that's really rewarding. Also, I mean, for me personally, you know, nature has saved my mental health. You know, whenever I am not feeling my best self, I go for a hike. You know, I was taught to do that by some very good friends of mine and good professors. To like, that's a good free anti-anxiety medicine. And so, trying really hard to find a job where I was spending a lot of time outside was really important to me and important to my mental health. And so getting to be outside a lot is definitely very rewarding. I can see that in my own personal life and personal growth, that it has helped me a lot to become a more positive and healthy person. And then some challenges, like any job, you know, there's a lot. I think it's really challenging. You know, you have to, when you're in the uniform, you always have to make sure you're not, you can't really have a lot of your own opinions about certain things, especially about politics. And so a lot of times visitors want to talk about their feelings, and maybe sometimes I 100% agree with them, but I can't really talk too much about that. And then some other challenges are being responsible for people's safety. You know, you have hundreds and hundreds of visitors coming out there, and you have to do your best to give them as much information as possible to keep themselves safe, because they're going to go off out into the trails and onto the open ocean to kayak and go snorkeling. And so it's just definitely challenging knowing that you're the person who is responsible for their safety if something doesn't work out so well. But so far, we've been incident-free since I've been there, so it's been nice. But it's a very rewarding job for the most part.
Thank you so much, Mithra. I'm gonna go ahead and move it on to Sally now.
I think one of the biggest rewarding parts of my job is seeing an actual park open. I haven't had any of my own projects open up, but I have been part of other park openings for some of my coworkers. It's amazing to see like something that you've worked on for so long actually be open, step up there, and like be able to like enjoy it and have the new visitors come up. One of my favorite ones was the Milton Street Park, which is right off Bayona, which I used to bike all the time when I was younger. So it was fun to like walk through that park and see a sign that I made. Like, that's also really rewarding. Just like, even just a simple sign like, hey, I worked on that. Like, that's a little piece of me at a park. I think that's really rewarding as well. And I love being able to communicate with the community as well and get their input and what they can see, what they would like to see from the space, because ultimately it's going to be their park and we want them to also take ownership and enjoy it. So that's really rewarding, and making them feel like they're being heard as well. I really like that. The challenges that also come with that is that creating a park doesn't fully depend on my agency. You know, you have to work with all these different people. So something that should have taken a month can take up to a year, or like, you know, that's kind of extreme, but you know, like a park doesn't just happen overnight. It takes years, and then it makes me feel bad because the community wants it so bad, but you have to come back to them like, hey, we're still working on it. It's just taking a little while. So if things could like speed up, that would be amazing. Another challenge is wanting to create these open spaces and open parks for everyone to enjoy. You know, like you've heard many of the people on this panel say, inner city underserved communities don't have easy access to these mountain spaces. And when we want to make these spaces for everyone, there are communities that maybe don't want a park there for various reasons, you know, and that's one of the challenging parts, wanting to create these spaces for everyone and then having the surrounding community not want it, you know. And I also work for CNC, so another really rewarding part is just leading campfire programs and teaching kids about nature and animals, and seeing their faces covered in marshmallows when they were, of course, their first s'more. That's super rewarding as well, and I really miss that.
Thank you, Sally. Fun fact, everybody, I actually shadowed Sally at a campfire, and she inspired me to be definitely the naturalist that I am today. The way that she makes
That's how we met.
Well, that's how we met. Thank you, Sally, so much for that response. We're going to go ahead and move it on to Bryan now.
Cool. Yeah, echoing that, like passing it on feeling, it is really so rewarding. I think for me, getting to be there when somebody experiences a natural place that they never knew for the first time, it's just such an amazing feeling and really motivates me to keep doing this work. Like I don't get to work with community like probably the majority of my job, like as taking people out. But when I do, it ends up being always kind of this surprising experience. So one example is last year for our San Gabriel Valley Leadership Development Program, we led people through like a training about parks and water and sustainable things that they can advocate to come to their community, because we have public dollars being spent on this stuff. And so it culminated with like a watershed tour where we took our San Gabriel Valley residents out from El Monte, visiting really innovative parks that have like best management practices of stormwater capture, native plants, all these cool things that they didn't know about that were just right, you know, in their own community. Then moving up the watershed to like Peck Park Lake, you see the river, and then finally into the Angeles Forest to the West Fork. I think that's in the National Monument actually. And there were people crying at the end of the day. Like this one girl that definitely through the training always had kind of a tension demeanor, always coming from work and stuff. It was like released, and she was just so joyful and, you know, thanking us to bring her somewhere that was so close that she never knew about. And I think it's just such a common story for a lot of us growing up in LA, that people see the mountains or see these hills, but like I never got taken there as a kid, so I never knew about them until finally you have that one friend or somebody that takes you there. And for me, I was like, oh my God, I've been gypped for like 20 years of my life that, you know, this stuff is back there the whole time. So to be that person that gets to, you know, begin to change someone's life is incredibly rewarding. So I will say that a honest, challenging thing is like the often low pay of these jobs that we do. like in nonprofit, you know, it's very frustrating, the kind of never knowing how the funding's gonna go and the grant cycles and stuff like that. And it does seem really unfair, like that, you know, honestly, people get paid lots of money to do lots of other things. And meanwhile, we're in the community trying to fix huge problems that are so important, just like teachers and other folks. And like, why aren't we paid what that value is? But I think as we all move up the ranks, hopefully we can really figure out ways to, you know, make that value be honored through like our, you know, board of supervisors and elected officials, because like we're doing the work that really matters for people. So just want to encourage everyone to, you know, be that person that takes somebody out.
Thank you, Bryan, for being very honest on that case. We're gonna go ahead and move in now to Ramsey.
Yes, I think definitely like what Sally and Bryan were saying, just being that person to change people's lives, of getting them outdoors and seeing the look on their face and having that experience of just, not just awe, but just that feeling of, wow, I do belong here. This is my space too. And I definitely have that. I have that same experience. Just for example, this last week, I was able to take my group up to the mountains to a resort called Lincoln Hills. A few of them had been before, and just to give you, you know, all of my youth are African American. So this place was sacred. It was built in 1922 by a group of African Americans who realized that they could not stay in Denver due to the segregation. So they built this resort for them to come 5 minutes from where I live. Is called 5 Points here on the east side. And that's where it was the jazz location. It's where everybody went to have fun at the height of the jazz era. But they had nowhere to go after they played. So they basically played for a room of white people, but they couldn't stay in Denver because of the segregation. So they were told to get out. They had nowhere to go. They sleep in the car, or they would sleep outside. And so they said, you know what? We need a place to go. So they built this resort, and it's amazing. It is amazing. It's 150 acres, and you drive all the way up. And so as we're driving, you know, I have all these kids, you know, in the van, and they're just like, where are we going? And we're just like, our people are amazing. You know, they built these roads, you know, but coming to find out, they took a train. They took the train that was, that stops right in 5 Points, and they took the train up there. So we're like, all right. So, I mean, it was a trek. It was like 150, an hour and 50 minutes out of Denver. So it was quite the experience. But seeing their faces and hearing them talk about how exciting it was to learn about the history of their people from you know, coming from Denver, it was amazing. And they have lived here their whole life, and they've heard of Lincoln Hills, but they didn't realize the context and the historical connection of African Americans. So that was impressive. And we took a hike. You know, we wore our Jordans and, you know, our appropriate, you know, the shoes that we have appropriate, you know, that we have in our Vans and Converse, and we walked up there. It was pretty impressive to see that mountain peak and to see their faces when they got a chance to see that overlook. So I think it's moments like that that make everything worth it. This place has been here all this time, and Langston Hughes, Lena Horne played, and we got to look inside the lodge. You can't go in yet, it's not safe yet, but they're working on it, and we get to look through the windows and see all the old furniture, and it makes you feel old because it was 30, 40, you know, the 40s and 30s and 40s. And then they're like, wow, that was so long ago. And you're just like, wow, I guess it was long ago, but wasn't that long ago. So you kind of have to remember they're 15, 16 years old and you're middle-aged, and you're looking at them like, okay, fine, I get it. So it's pretty impressive to see that, that look on their face. It makes, I will tell you in the next story, it makes the challenges that much more rewarding, and I have to kind of compose myself because the story is, it's very difficult. The last couple of weeks here in Denver, we've had a lot of shootings. The gun violence is because of COVID, the isolation. Denver has about 3 million people, but we are isolated, all four directions. You know, we're sort of here with each other, especially in parts of town where the segregation is still here. So I want to let everyone understand that it may not be in our textbooks, but it is running rampant here, and we are isolated, we are still segregated, and we are still fighting the racism that has oppressed us for decades. And so with this gun violence, what's happening is our kids are deciding that that is going to be how they counteract their pain. So in our park here on the east side, we do have a lot of gang violence, and the battle of the gangs has picked up, especially since more things are opening with COVID changing, moving along. And so one day we are sitting in our circle, and it was a day after one of the youth here in Denver was shot and killed. He was 14. He was killed about 3 miles from the park that we're at. And there was a group of kids on the corner, and there were about 6 of them, and they were there for about a half hour. And yeah, you have to keep an eye on pretty much everything. My eyes and my ears are always going. We do have the Denver Police Department patrol a lot, but again, they leave and we're by ourselves. And so one of the kids walks through our group with the blue rag, and there's a swing set right where we set up every day. He ties the blue rag, and we're watching him, and he walks away. And one of the youth in the group, he falls to his knees, and he starts crying. It was one of his best friends who was shot and killed the day before. And that's really what happens in a lot in our program, is that the connections to this gun violence, the connections to this gang violence, the connections to all of this trauma that's happening within the city, it always finds its way back to us. And so right then and there, we change direction, right? That park now becomes a different place for us. So we have to huddle up and support each other in a different way. We have to say, okay, this park is sacred now for a different reason. And so I think that to me is the biggest challenge, is having to maneuver this emotion and maneuver this space that is supposed to be so positive. It's supposed to be it's supposed to build self-esteem. It's supposed to build up our youth. And at times it really just breaks our youth down. It just literally tears them down to their knees. And so we have to make that space available to them, and we have to say, okay, we're going to still occupy this space. And we do. We went back the next day. We felt it was safe. But yeah, that's the challenge, is of how to say the program we're doing is relevant, but we still have to support our youth on an emotional and physical and mental level. And it is difficult a lot of times, but it makes those Lincoln Hills trips that much more worth it. But the challenge is trying to make sure that they come back the next day. Right? That they come back and that they don't feel afraid, or they don't feel like it's not something that's worth it to them. And so, yeah, it's working through those challenges that make it hard. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ramsey, for being able to share all that you did. We're gonna go ahead and now pass it over to Brenda.
Oh, wow. That's powerful stuff. Number one, I want to say I think there's a lot of us here that looked at law enforcement or work with law enforcement as a career path. I did. That's my field of study, is administration of justice. And one day I was running along the track, and I decided I don't like this. I don't want to do this. Let me go find something else to do. But I ended up at the Sheriff's Department. I've been there 10 years as a volunteer. And one of my favorite things that I've done with them is incorporate gardening, planting trees at Peck Park as sort of a restorative justice. Planting something and doing community service, not as a punishment, but as ownership to this space. This tree is yours. You dug the hole. You put in sweat equity. In 100 years, this tree will still be here, giving shade, giving habitat, and bringing in families together. You did that. You did that, and it's part of the VITA program. With, you know, I'm very lucky that my captains throughout the year throughout the years have always believed in the PI model of law enforcement, which is the prevention, intervention, and enforcement as a last resort, where prevention takes precedence. And so one of my favorite things, not just of my job, but in the work that I do, is that the actual space that I take up, the air. I mean, having a desk that looks out a window where deer come through, and you know, and they just nibble on ironwoods that you just put in, and you want to throw rocks at them, but you know that if something isn't eating your garden, then you're not part of a healthy bio community. So okay, dear, go ahead and eat, but please don't eat it all. And oh gosh, the biggest challenge, again, like Bryan said, is the money. I have right now, I think I'm working 3 jobs just to get by. My main job I love, but everything that I do outside of work, all the volunteering with Nature for All, for with the San Gabriel Heritage Association, with the Sheriff's Department, all of that I do for free because I believe in what I do. I think Jules said she was an accidental angel. There's no such things as accidents. We are here because this is where we belong. This is where our paths brought us. So enjoy it, embrace it, just, you know, run that road. But I don't like running, so I'll walk my road. So that's the biggest challenge. And I think one of the things that I really like is, even though I don't have power, I have influence. When, you know, being part of this foundation, I get to see a lot of the projects that are going on throughout the Southland, because, you know, we're probably one of the, if not the only, native plant nursery in the area. I get to see where the plants are going and what orgs I can connect with, and you know, and see what everyone's doing and how we can help, and all of that fantastic stuff. And with internally, you know, say things to my boss, you know, like, because masks are required. And he walked in wearing, you know, his blue rag. And I said, what's it like to just pick up any bandana and not be afraid of being shot? Tell me what that feels like, because I don't know that feeling, you know. And it's having that kind of influence and being where you are to let people know that all of the problems that we're having, the environmental justice as a social justice, is personal. You know someone that is being directly affected by an injustice. That's it.
Thank you, Brenda. Definitely popped off. Thank you so much. We are cutting a little short on time now, so I'm gonna have to go ahead and move on to the next question. Jules, I know you got a chance to talk a little bit about your challenges, so I'm gonna go ahead and just go over that. I mean, skip you for there, but we'll go ahead and everybody will get a chance to answer this next following question, which is gonna be, so you all got here, right? We all talked about a little bit of how we arrived and where we're at today. But I think the biggest thing in like taking up a career in the environment is like, how did we get there? Like, what are some of the activities, extracurricular activities that we did, internships? Was it like because you heard of something that was like that maybe wasn't related to your outdoor, like where you're at now, but it like contributed somehow or the other? So that's gonna be this next question. And as panelists, we could just, you know, keep that pretty quick and short, as we still have a few more questions to go ahead and answer along with the Q&A. So we'll start with Sally.
So how I got here, right? So my journey pretty much started in high school through a little recycling program that kind of led to internships. And I was looking through some of the Q&As, and I know the struggle for a lot of us is, how do we get to work in this field without having to do just volunteer and actually get paid? And I've been lucky enough to have every internship that I've had be paid. And it's been a lot through like connections. And I went through the LA Audubon, so here in Culver City, and that was paid as well. And I actually ended up with MRCA because when CNC was part of MRCA, they did a program called Bridge to Parks Careers. And it was a 4-month program. It was completely paid. I think it was like 40 hours. It was like a full-time job essentially, but it was paid. And the program gave us the ability to get our California naturalist certification, become an interpretive guide. And I actually went into the program wanting to go back to as a park aide for the California State Parks. And I ended up staying with MRCA because they offered me a job where I was able to split my time between interpretive work and park planning. And at the end, dividing my time kind of didn't work out, so I ended up sticking to park planning. And so I've been here now for like 5 years, but it's also important for me to mention that I do not have a degree in anything. I am still in school, trying to go back to finish my geography degree, but at the moment I do not have anything. Everything has been through, like I said, paid internships and connecting with like-minded people that have helped me. Honestly, I could not be where I'm at without the help of mentors and friends who have given me the opportunity to get to here. It's honestly, finding a community around you is so important because we can help each other, uplift each other, and pave the way for other people other kids, other BIPOC just like us. I do have a GIS certification, so I do a little bit of GIS work. I would love to get more work in that, but that's for the future. And I don't know if I covered everything. But don't be afraid to ask for help either, because without the help of my community, like I said, I couldn't be here. I also, what has helped me, and like Brenda mentioned, I'm part of the NPCA Next Generation Council, and that's obviously not paid. So it's something that I really, really care about. So I unfortunately have to make those sacrifices to volunteer my time, but in the end, I try to see it as the things are going to come to me, these job opportunities are going to come to me more. And also I feel like this COVID time has paved the way for a lot of online work, and don't be afraid to pursue that through Instagram, through social media, because you can also subsidize some of your pay with that. It might take a little bit of work, but social media is so important right now, and I think it's a really important tool to use. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Araceli. Agree with all of that was said. I feel like I wouldn't be here without my community or the mentors that I've learned and have learned so much from. Thank you. We're gonna go ahead and move it to Bryan now.
Cool. Yeah, I totally agree with Sally. For me, it's been a long journey to here, and a lot of my growth was definitely not through the school part, but through all these like internships and programs I did. So I feel like my number one thing is like, yes, go out and spend time searching for cool things because they really exist all over the place, but so many people don't know about the opportunities. So 3 examples. So I went through a very long time ago, Public Allies Los Angeles, which it's still around, a social justice fellowship here in LA. And it really connected me with the social justice world that I was really not brought up with. After that, I got into landscape architecture through Cal Poly Pomona. But for one summer, my boyfriend was like, oh my God, let's get out of here. Let's go to Yellowstone and wash dishes and stuff like that. And I was like, let me see if there's an internship instead. And like, lo and behold, when you search for stuff, it is out there. Like I found the one landscape internship at the park, just cold called. And the lady was like, oh, awesome. When can you come? Great. I don't have to advertise it to the colleges now. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And separately from that, 2 years later, we went and worked for the Maine Conservation Corps. just like another random Google search, want to get out of here, you know, build trails. It really exposed me to so many things, just seeing a different part of the country, seeing what small towns are like, being like definitely the only gay Asian person for miles and miles. But like such good experiences. So, you know, I always joke around with Araceli and Brenda that we need like a Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts patch of like all the cool outdoor training programs that are out there. So it's like the CNC thing, the Leadership Academy. I went through Outward Bound Adventures DALI program, Diverse Outdoor Leadership Institute. So if you specifically want to take kids of color out on hiking and backpacking trips, that's an excellent program for you. So there's many things out there. There was some Q&A about like, how do you do this work when you're trying to make money and volunteering takes up too much time? I would say start following all these cool groups that you're interested in, really hone in on who's doing the work that you care about the most and start giving them some time, because that's the only way you can build that experience.
Thank you, Bryan. I think right now also, because we're talking a lot about different agencies and nonprofits and internships that we all have gotten so far, just note to the attendees and audience, we have already compiled a list of things that the panelists have talked about, so you will be receiving it, and then any additional links the panelists are that want to send after this panel, we'll make sure to get that to everybody as well. So yeah, just for the panelists to keep aware, we try to keep this next question really short, so we're going to go ahead and finish this question, but let's just, you know, keep it on because we do have Q&A coming up right after this. So thank you, Bryan. We're going to go ahead and move it on to Ramsey.
Yes, so I actually have an art background, I have an art degree, so you never know where you end up. But I ended up working for California State Parks for years down in Sacramento. But I was privileged to work in an air-conditioned building for all those years. But I learned how to interpret, and I learned how to lead tours and really just program outline. That's really what led me into trying to further my interpretation career. But I have to say, CNC, Community Nature Connection, is where I really got into the environment. So I want to say, hopefully Kelly's watching, actually is watching up at Franklin Canyon Park. Man, that was an experience. Up until then, I had never led a hike before. But like I said, I feel like I'm a really good interpreter. I'm really good at developing programs and in training interpretation, but it was an amazing experience. So I'll never forget the time that Ashley had me hold a bug. That was impressive. So I got most of my my interpretation for the environment and outdoor education through CNC. So thank you so much. Miss you guys a lot.
Thank you, Ramsey. Definitely remember that. Yep, I remember that. I'm gonna go ahead and pass it on to Brenda now.
So yeah, build your connections. My running joke is there's only like 6 environmental people of color and we all know each other. So yeah, count them on the screen. Here we are. No, just kidding. There's more of us. There's a lot more of us. The difficult part is actually being seen and being recognized. And that's 2 different things. I mean, you know, do you want recognition or do you just want people to see you? Who do you want to see you and why? So that goes along with, you know, what kind of job you're going to do. Advocacy work, no one's ever going to see you. It's just not going to happen. Being on trails, wearing a uniform, you're going to make a difference and people will see you. So, you know, keep that in mind. Build your connections. I think I ended up here because, oh gosh, Crystal was going to fight a bear and I was there with her. Crystal was going to fight a bear, and then Vianney sent me the email that said, hey, you know, Crystal recommended you, and then that's all I read, and I just replied, whatever Crystal wants, I'll do. So build your connection, go through the programs. There are going to be links about the programs, and reach out. I'm comfortable with everyone reaching out on social media. We're here so that you can use our ceiling you know, as your floor build up. One of the things we went through the OBA was each one teach one, right? That's something that we all do. There's a question about money. I ended up doing environmental work because I was looking for money. I just needed money for a computer. And so I put in the time to go through the Nature for All Leadership Academy. And it just went on from there. And at some point you might have to make that decision. Is money important, or is my cause important? And yeah, those are big grown-up problems to have. Yeah.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and pass this over to Mithra.
So I'll keep it short, but some of the things that I did to get me to the position that I am today is be persistent. I bugged a lot of professors all the time when I was in my community college classes, when I went and transferred over to university. I did community college for 6 years before I figured out what I wanted to do. But once I figured it out, I asked the professors, what is going on? This is what I'm interested in. Help me figure it out. I want to be outside. I want to teach people about nature. I had no idea that interpretation even existed. I didn't even know it was a major or something you could do until I got to my university and found out they were one of the only schools that had that as a major, but I was in a different major. So I just bugged my professors, asked them about internships, and if you're persistent, if you bother the people who are there who are supposed to be mentoring you, your professors are paid to help you, like they're supposed to be helping you. Bother them, use them as resources, use your counselors, use your friends, find people who are doing internships, ask them how they figured it out. Each university is different, each campus is different, but just be persistent, don't give up, make space for yourself, ask questions. But the specific organizations that I went through is I did a Student Conservation Association internship. It was a paid internship. I had my travel paid to Alaska from LA and back. They gave me a check to fly there. And I had my housing paid for, and they paid me, and they provided mentorship, and they provided experience. I was in Alaska for 9 months. And that is most likely the most pivotal internship that I had that helped me get my Park Service position, because most of the people who work for the Park Service did an SCA internship in their past. And so that organization is very, very close with the Park Service. And it was started by this very amazing woman in the 50s who wanted to connect students to natural resource government agencies. So it's specifically there for you, and please use it. And then also AmeriCorps is another great organization that provides education awards. There's tons of scholarships out there. You just have to search for them, like what Bryan said. I just spent lots of time searching on Google for what I wanted, and there almost always was something there. It wasn't easy. It took a lot of time. And I definitely come from a family where I was working a lot while I was in school, and at a time I was taking care of my mom. And, it's not easy. It's unfortunately a little bit of a struggle for people in our groups, but you got to be persistent. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it and that there's not room for you there. Make room for yourself. And also, if you want to contact me, I'm more than happy to give out my email address if you have any further questions about how to get specifically into a National Park Service position, whether it's a ranger. There's tons of other positions. You don't just have to be a ranger. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mithra, on persistency. That is real. And I know as folks of color, I feel like we don't really know how to attain that so much, like just having to be in this survival mode this whole time. I'm really glad that you got to touch on that. We're going to go over to Jules and Araceli, and then we're going to go ahead and start with Q&A after that.
Yeah, I think the main thing how I kind of live my life, I just basically, if I want to do something, I'm going to do it. I don't try to look through the prism of my race, my sex. It's just like, if that spot's not there and I want to do it, why can't I have that spot? Why can't I go for it? So I don't be afraid to be the first, person to do it. Someone has to do it first. So it's like, don't always look, I say, well, I don't see anyone that looks like me. Okay, can you do the job? Then stand up and do the job. You be that person, then you can be that person that some other person can look to. So I think a lot of the thing is just be open to the opportunities that come your way. Be prepared for them. So when the opportunities come, you say, I can do that. You can be confident in doing that. And I mean, that's kind of like how I pretty much live my life. It's like, oh, that seems like an interesting thing to do. I mean, this being a ranger led to me dealing with the International Ranger Federation, to dealing with the Thin Green Line. I mean, it's just a continuing way you just live your life and how I look at my life. Like, look, I'm going to do what I want to do. I don't put any limitations on me. It may be scared. You may have to step out of your comfort zone. But it's just, I think we need to encourage that more in everybody. Just you may be the first, but just go ahead and try. What's the worst that can happen, really?
Thank you, Jules. We're gonna go ahead and move it to Araceli now.
Yeah, so the introverted folks are gonna hate this, but I would say my advice is to network as much as possible. And whenever you do meet someone that you maybe connect to, like Mithra, throw out her email. Thanks for doing that. Definitely reach out, stay connected. Ask for resources. There's an opportunity that they might connect you to somebody else who might know a little more, or might be able to help connect you if that's like more specifically what you're looking for. And I'll say that because just like, I guess through my own personal experience, I was really shy, but after graduating from the academy, I was given an email and I reached out to that email. I most likely didn't get the job that I had applied for, but I was like, look, I would love to help, just like even volunteer work, keep me up to date, just let me know. And the very next email I got was, hey, we have a position in Sequoia, like rent is paid, would you like it? I was like, not like I did interview, but it wasn't even, it was just very direct, like would you be open for this? And I would like to credit the fact that I emailed that person and was like, don't forget about me right after that. So just really like networking and building yourself up, like your little 1-minute speech about who you are, like really practice that and get yourself out there. And then one more thing I want to say as advice, I had to turn off my video so I could go get it real quick. This favorite book, Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Brown. There's this line, a principle from this book that I wanted to make sure I shared with everyone, because I know I think about this kind of often around this conversation, and it's not that one. There is a conversation in the room that only these people at this moment can have. Find it. And so I just want to like leave people with that, like always just like know that kind of what Joel was saying, like even if you don't see somebody out there, like go look for your people. If you don't see them, go ahead and start your group and your network or your circle of like support.
Thank you, Araceli. So now moving on to Q&A. We do have quite a few, so we'll try to get to all of them as best as we can. The first one that we have is for Ramsey. With trauma-informed training / certifications, what kind of them might be out there that you recommend for professionals who work with youth or even adults?
Yeah, I truly recommend trauma-informed care. Before I go into that, we have to be very careful, because I think we all feel like once we get this trauma-informed care training, which is meaning that we are informed of another person's trauma, that we are, and we're not. We're just not. You will never know my trauma. I will never know your trauma. So we have to be very careful to have that box us in. And we always try to share that a lot, especially at GRASP. We try to say that when you receive this training of what trauma is, you know what trauma is, but just realize that that's not the end of it. That's not the extent, that each case will be different. And so I think I don't have a very specific trauma-informed care training to say that you should take. My personal opinion and professional opinion is that if you do take any form of trauma-informed care, to please just take the training as a training that is going to that will help you to understand trauma on a philosophical case. But please remember to always respect and understand that trauma is different for all of us, and we may not have that connection with everyone that we come into contact with their trauma. We see it a lot grasp that with trauma-informed care that, oh, we got this training, then we're good. We're gonna go out there and attack this trauma and we're gonna figure it out. But we find that you have to be very individual with that training and with each case. So if I could say just, they're all pretty much baselined in what trauma-informed care really is. So once you receive that training, please just remember to move whatever that training did for you in a more personal space. So that way, when you are using those practices, that you're taking each case on one at a time, if that makes sense.
Awesome, thank you, Ramsey. The next question is more, I feel like, for all panelists, which is, her name is Ashley from Oakland Zoo Education. I am finishing up a graduate program, parentheses, Master of Education, with a focus in environmental education, and I'm currently applying for a PhD in sustainable education. My question for the panel is, having this extended education background helpful in the field with regards to bringing diversity in the field?
I'll help with that question. The answer is probably not. To really bring diversity into the field, you have to make connections with people that are diverse in the field. The connection is never org to org. The connection is person to person. And, you know, build that relationship and then start working and using your education, but make the connection to the person first.
Yeah, tagging on to that, through those connections, you're able to build trust with the community, with the group you are trying to work with. And trust is so important, especially when it comes to underserved BIPOC communities, because we're not going to easily trust anyone. Even if you're highly educated, like, you need to build that trust first and work with the community.
I can answer part of that question, and I get asked a lot during my day, people want to be a ranger, you know, how do I become a ranger? The one question I always ask them is, what type of ranger do you want to be? Because there's different types, and that will inform what path they're going to take. They're obviously inspired by something. What person inspired you? Okay, research their path, how they went about that if you admire them. But it's like, when it comes to people ask questions about, I want to be a ranger, again, you have to answer the first question, what type of ranger do I actually want to be? And then that will pretty much, because it's not just rangers, you got wildlife officers, you have conservation officers, you got park guards, they go by different names all over the world and all over the state. You know, you got urban rangers, you got open space, backcountry rangers. I mean, you have, I think most people, when they think about rangers, they're thinking Yogi Bear, the NPS backcountry ranger that's seasonal. And I tell my wife, what do you think I really do? Because again, we work with a lot of homeless. And when Ramsey was talking about trauma, when I first meet a homeless person, you know, we just literally have a conversation. Because I really want to know, I said, well, how did we get to this point? So it's just listening is really helpful in the field, because that will inform you of how you can help that person and what resources that you can bring to that person. So yeah, it's just, you just got to decide, you know, when you want a career in the environmental world, what does that look like? What inspired you? How did that person get to where they're at? You know, and go from there.
Thank you so much, everybody that got to answer that question. The next one is going to be, what options does someone have to pursue an environmental career but doesn't have experience, isn't a recent grad, and doesn't have the social economic privilege to just volunteer? I'm a first-gen Latina, the only person in my family to go to a university have a BS in biology and studies the topics, but don't know where to look for these entry points.
Start your own program. That's, you know, we all go through periods of not having money, okay? The money comes and goes, don't worry about the money. If this is something that you want to do, then start your own program. And to, you know, also echo what Jules said. What kind of environmental work do you want to do? There's advocacy, there's conservation, there's reforestation, reestablish, you know, making stuff new again. I can't think of all the words, but you know, and there's also like where I work, there's propagation, there's collecting seeds and all of that stuff, and there's sales, and there's policy, and there's education. There's environmental is everything around you. So if that means that there's a lot of fields that you probably don't know about. Because I am the volunteer coordinator, I would say, you know, start by volunteering, because you can do something at your own pace for an hour a week, whatever, and find out whether or not it's for you. Volunteering might seem like a waste of time, but really, you know, it's like being an unpaid intern. It's find the time to really think about what it is that you're going to do in the environmental field.
So Bryan and Araceli have talked about this, but the Leadership Academy, look for programs like that, or CNC, like just a training institute that gives you the ability, like how Brenda said and Jules said, to find out what exactly, like what topic or what field you like the most, you feel more comfortable in, you enjoy most. Because I did a little bit of bird surveying, and that was fun, but birds, I'm not the best at it either, so that didn't fully work for me. So go through those training programs, because sometimes I'll actually provide you with even more resources and opportunities to get certified with different organizations or different programmings. The Training Institute is a great start as well.
Just to add on to that, I mean, it doesn't always have, like, volunteering is awesome and it's great, and it can get you your feet wet just to start trying to do something that you might be interested in without putting too much effort into it. But like we all kind of were saying, there's so many paid opportunities out there. There really are. I mean, just with all the different connections that we've all added and all the links we're going to give you, there are paid opportunities. You don't have to be broke just to do what you love. But also, in my experience, most of the jobs do not pay a lot. So if you're looking to get into working for the environment to make a lot of money, unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. So I would say, if your goal is to enjoy your job and do something that you're passionate about and that you love, maybe focus on that first. And you'll most likely find a position or an internship where you can definitely live by your means and even a little bit more, and then be rich deeply on the inside in your heart, because you're doing something that's actually meaningful to you, and that's going to be helping people when you're gone. So that's my 2 cents.
Awesome, thank you. Next question. Really like this question coming up, and this is for all panelists here too. As someone who is chronically ill and differently abled, do your jobs have much flexibility for sick leave or changing the ways you can perform the physical part of your jobs?
Yes, mine does. Because of COVID, we had to restructure a lot, and education now is happening a lot on Zoom. So that's something that can be done. I mean, if you're going to work in a conservation corps, probably not, because that's very physical work. But if you're going into education for environmental issues, then yeah, it's very adaptable. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add.
Well, as far as like different things, online training is going to be in the future, since we have the sense of COVID. I actually teach technical communication, and so it's just like you kind of have to go online for that. That can be done online. So if you want to be an environmental career, put together a training program that you can do online, because that content is really needed right now.
I'll add one more thing to that. I think just shouting out some organizations that I see out there that are doing work, not, you know, like specifically looking for differently abled folks to help lead some of their programming, for example. So again, kind of connecting back at, like, about putting yourself out there, and, you know, like I want to, you don't see somebody already doing that work, you know, claim that space for yourself and say, this is the work I do and want to do. And I feel like then jobs kind of won't come to you, but will become more obvious, right? What works for you. Some jobs that come to mind, like Active SGV, East Yard Community for Environmental Justice, and ours here at Nature for All, they're structured much differently than your typical nonprofit that's like hierarchical and things like that. And so I just say, like, there's organizations out there. I'm thinking more of like the sick leave that are understanding of like differently abled bodies, and it's just about, again, networking and finding them.
Thank you, everybody who has shared so far. This next question is for Jules. It says, hi, Jules. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. I have been looking for careers in the outdoors, and I was wondering what is the best way to get an internship or entry level. I think it's for, I could see for Jules and for Mithra. Do they have a program for people of color?
So the question is there like a program specifically in the NPS that's geared specifically towards people of color? I know for like, what was that?
No, I think
okay.
It's like SAMO, but go ahead, Mithra.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I know for in the LA area, Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area, which is one of the largest urban parks. It works with MRCA, NPS, state parks, and tons of other agencies, but the NPS does have a program called SAMO Youth. And so they connect students who are in high school from LAUSD and from Oxnard to internships for the summer, and they're paid internships, and it's hopefully a stepping stone so that those students, when they are then in college, they could continue to intern with the park, and then hopefully get a position as a ranger or a wildlife biologist, or just depends on what they want to do with their field. So when I worked there were at least 4 different rangers in leadership positions and supervising positions that had gone through the SAMO Youth program. So that's what I know locally. As far as nationally with the Park Service, I'm not aware of anything that specifically is geared toward persons of color or the BIPOC community. And that is unfortunate and should be changed. And then, yeah, Jewel wants.
Yeah, well, in MRCA, we don't have anything specifically for, but like our chief ranger came through the LACC program. We just have one of our newest rangers came through, I think it was the River to the Park program. But the MRCA, we partner with a lot of different organizations, and they've always been like, oh, we see a candidate that will work with the MRCA. That's how I was pulled into the MRCA. A lot of our rangers were pulled in the MRCA. That our wildland firefighters, we have our firefighting academy. So the MRCA, since I've been here, it's always been about, looking for good candidates from all walks of life. And like I said, it's easier that way when you work with different organizations. We see how they work and like, oh, okay, you'll be a good fit for our mission at the MRCA. So as far as having specific programs, no, but partnerships, yes, MRCA has always done that.
Thank you, Jules. Go ahead, Sal.
So I know it wasn't directed towards like me, but there are a lot of opportunities right now on social media with different up and coming organizations, collectives, if you want to call them that, intersection environmentalism. environmentalism. They are looking for paid interns / kind of paid jobs as well. There's another Instagram called Outdoor Advocacy, and they're also looking to hire. And both of these are looking specifically for BIPOC people. And you don't have to have a specific background in environmentalism or anything like that. There's a bunch of different positions or opportunities for whether it's like social media, what's the other one? Like creative forms, graphic design, sorry, I couldn't think of the word. There's a bunch of different opportunities on social media as well. So look out for those. And because of COVID and kind of the more interest in climate change and everything, a lot of these intersectional opportunities are coming about. So definitely keep that on your radar.
Thank you, Sally. Let's see, it's a few more questions. So I'm trying our best to get through them with the time that we have left. So I'm gonna start to like the ones that I feel like we might haven't had a chance to like touch on. One of them, let's see, this next one is, to everyone, do you know of any grant scholarship programs for BIPOC to get financial support so they can afford to work unpaid internships that may lead to entry-level positions in the field? This is a really good question, but I want to see if anybody might happen to know this. But for the record, the Training Institute is providing a California Naturalist course, which is meant to certify you as a California Naturalist, and there's also scholarships for that current certification at the moment. So I'll throw that out there as a scholarship opportunity happening for the Training Institute with CNC that you can access on the website. But there's any other scholarships anybody knows of, feel free to respond.
I know for my school, I went to Humboldt State University. When you're logged in as a student, you could just click on scholarships, and there are tons of scholarships on there for different majors, for different fields. There were a lot of environmental-based scholarships, and in my experience, most of those scholarships, no one knew about them or applied for them because they just didn't look. So your own university most likely has tons of scholarships available to you. And I mean, I don't see myself as the most talented writer, and every scholarship I applied for, I got, I think because I was probably the only person or one out of maybe two people that were even applying for it. So definitely, if you're at school, community college or university, like look at your own website when you log in and look for scholarships at your school. That's probably the #1 easiest place to start, where you have the highest likelihood of getting a scholarship. And if you don't already know what FAFSA is, while you're going to school, I hope everyone who's a student knows what FAFSA is. Of course, depends on your income bracket or your age, but that's FAFSA paid for pretty much my entire schooling so that I could go to school, and thank you everyone who pays their taxes so that I could go to school. But look up FAFSA if you aren't already familiar with that. It provides lots of scholarships and grants and federal Pell Grants that you don't have to pay back at all.
Thank you on that note, Mithra. The next question that we have is, to everyone, how do you supplement your income considering the low pay working for a NPO, I'm guessing a nonprofit organization?
I have 4 jobs. I work Tuesday through Saturday as my main job, and I'm here for the benefits, even though I love what I do. I have a Monday job working in accounting. I have, oh gosh, I'm working for the Census Bureau evenings, and on Sundays, sometimes I take people out on outings and make a little bit of money that way. So again, I mean, I would love to have just one job so I can do more volunteer work, but you learn to do without. One thing I will not do without is, insurance. That's high on my list of needs. But again, it's balancing your needs and doing something that's fulfilling. I've had other jobs where I was making twice as much what I'm making now, and I hated every minute of it. I wouldn't do it again, even for the money. I have a card to work in the oil industry. They made good money, but I couldn't live myself doing that. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's a really great question, by the way. How do we survive? The one thing I found that a lot of nonprofits, especially the grant-based nonprofits, really have, they allow you to contract. So a lot of, they may not have full-time positions or even part-time positions, but they have contracting positions where you could still use your skills and stay within your field and just get like maybe 40 hours, let's say a month, or maybe 20 hours a month, and to kind of supplement that. So I would definitely recommend looking for nonprofits that are asking for contractors, because all you really need to contract is, you know, just some simple paperwork for tax purposes, and you can be a contractor. So you can facilitate meetings, you can facilitate different outdoor programs, and just really build your own momentum to supplement for that income with whatever nonprofit that you don't work for at the time. But again, I recommend that you obviously check with your current employer, but I have found that, especially here in Denver, a lot of nonprofits are willing to contract with other nonprofit employees because they know that they're trained, they know the organization that they currently work for, so it helps them to sort of build this connection with other environmentalists or outdoor education interpreters or whatever your field is, to help to make sure that their program is balanced out and supported as well. Helps build connection to the community.
I live in a less than 200 square foot garage conversion, so that helps me back to my parents' house. But mine is a little unconventional. I recently supplement a lot of my income via Instagram. So if you are a creator of any sort, use social media, like use that to bring in some extra money. It's not that reliable, but it does help. So I also sell clothes sometimes from time to time on Instagram as well, and that helps me bring in some extra cash when needed.
Thank you everybody for, you know, all these side hustles that we, you know, gotta do, you know, to survive and keep it going. It's very rewarding, you know, that first question, I think that's the question of the panel, very rewarding, but we know that, like Bryan said, we should be really truly getting paid for like the fruit of our work and how much, you know, how much it really is for us to be able to take these spaces and where we're at in the environment. Okay, so final question. Do apologize for those, actually, I think we're running a little short, but we can answer this question really, really quickly. It was already touched on. Brenda, I feel like you really highlighted this a bit on what you mentioned, but it's really, what are your views on Indigenous relationships with the land versus the conventional Western views of conservation and nature being something that needs to be preserved, and sort of cynically framing all human contact with nature as adverse and destructive? More specifically, what advantage do alternative BIPOC views have what advantage do alternative BIPOC views have to this prevalent model of viewing ourselves, and how do we promote that? I think you all got to touch on that and how you all take space in the current field that you have, but anybody want to close up with this question?
Specifically, okay, so my background, I'm Taramara Tepehuan. We are Indigenous people. Within our culture, we do not see ourselves as being separate from nature. We're part of it. We're there to take care of the land, and the land is there to take care of us. It's a circle, it's a web. So this idea of Western conventional views, I don't know what that is. Those ideas are foreign to me. Besides the environmental justice and the administration of justice, my other major was sociology and humanities. So when you're judging a culture, you have to judge it within what is acceptable in that culture. It's not, you know, outdoor, well, it's centric, right? It's a very centric view. So is all contact with nature negative? What's negative? Within the culture, within what Indigenous culture, within what person of color culture? You can't umbrella it because it's so specific. California alone has over 200 indigenous cultures. What might be an acceptable practice to one is not an acceptable practice to another. I'll give you an example. Matilla poppies grow from Santa Barbara into Baja California. They have a medicinal use. The Chumash people do not use Matilla poppies in the same way that the Kumeyaay people use. So again, it has to be within the culture and what is acceptable, what is not. And when you frame it that way and don't say things like, you know, Western conventional, no, don't even bring that up. Decolonize decolonize the outdoors.
Thank you, Brenda. Okay, everybody, this is it. It is 1 p.m. Thank you, everybody that stuck around, that made it through the 2 hours, or I hope everybody got something from it. So much was shared. And just a note, this session is being recorded. Attendees, you will get the list of links that were talked about today. So don't worry about, you know, trying to scramble through the chat. Everything will be compiled for you in an email. And please share this recorded session with anybody else that you feel like is going to benefit. Thank you so much to our panelists. Everything from the moment that I asked you all to be on here, everything up to this point. I really hope we can all still stay connected even after everything is done being virtually. I appreciate you all. You all shared so much insight. My heart is so full this morning, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day and / weekend. Please stay cool for those that are living in LA. It's really hot right now. We're getting a lot of love through the chat, so if you all want to look at that, so amazing. And yeah, we'll definitely stay in contact and we'll share all these resources. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.